From this vantage point, respectfully, it appears as though your trip to El Salvador is less about principle and even less about Abrego Garcia and more about grandstanding and fear-mongering American citizens in a continuing narrative that casts yourself as a hero in this melodrama and the villain as Donald Trump.
He did not like that. He did not like that. Way to get him, Will.
Well, the Fox News and Common Sense Department thinks Democrats must be very pleased that Republicans are willing to help their cause. Turns out 4 more Democratic members of Congress traveled to El Salvador to visit their new star of the party, Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Sadly, the Democrats were told that unlike Senator Chris Van Hollen's El Salvador journey, this time taxpayers would not pick up the tab. But the National Republican Congressional Committee said they would foot the bill. Common sense is touched. Although it does come with a small catch. The Republicans want the Democrats to live stream the gathering and take lots of selfies. After all, nothing shouts political savvy like a live stream selfie salute with an alleged gang wife beater. And common sense is pretty sure those nice Republicans would also support Democrats using the video and selfie shots to campaign on. Usually Democrats are on the wrong side of 80-20 issues. This time they're on the wrong side of a 95-5 issue. Maybe that's why when it comes to voter confidence in Democratic congressional leadership, Democrats are at 25%. Not just the all-time low, but 9 points lower than the previous all-time low. Common sense thinks Democrats are on the verge of something historic, something that would make Gary Hart so proud.
Well, it looks like the Democrats just cannot stay out of their own way, and it just keeps getting worse. Now we got 4 Democrat congressional members that have gone over to El Salvador and have had the door shut right in their face. And what you're going to see in this video is clips of the embarrassing episode that these folks had over in El Salvador and how now the Democrats are trying to shift the storyline. Remember, at one point, it was all about this great father and this husband and, who was wrongly abducted and kidnapped from America and thrown into jail and was accused of being a gang member. The White House let them go with that BS. Then they released photos. Did y'all see the tattoos on the man's knuckles where it had the snake and the spade and everything that was MS-13? Then the Chicago Bulls hat, which when I looked it up, that is representation of the MS-13. Not to mention the police report where his wife put a restraining order against him. It says she feared for her life in 2021. This is 2 years after 2 deportation judges ruled that he was ineligible to be in America and was to be deported, just not to El Salvador, where Abrego Garcia said he feared for his life from a rival gang. So the Democrats went out on this hill talking about how great he was, and the White House let him build up steam, and they keep falling for the Trump traps. They just let him build up all of this huff and puff, and then just methodically started dropping out the evidence. And now you got people like, holy crap. You should even hear and see what the Maryland voters are saying about what's going on. And I'm going to show you that clip here in the video. So without further ado, I'm going to get into it. Let's check out this reporting of what Chris Van Hollen had to say. Then right after this clip, I'm going to follow it up where you'll see one of the Democrat congressional members, Maxwell Frost, gets destroyed by Will Cain in methodical fashion. So hang in there with me and let's get going with this one first.
The Maryland senator just visited Abrego Garcia in El Salvador last week, saying the government there tried hard to prevent the meeting. Van Hollen said he didn't ask Abrego Garcia if he was affiliated with any gangs, instead focusing on his condition.
I was not there to litigate all the details of his case. I was there to make sure that he was still alive and check on his health.
On Sunday, the State Department filed another status report in court. It says Abrego Garcia is being held at a lower security facility in Santa Ana, El Salvador. It says he's staying in his own room with a bed and furniture rather than a prison cell. Senator Van Hollen calls this an abduction without due process.
Because when you trample on the constitutional rights of one man, as the courts have all said is happening in this case, you threaten the constitutional rights of every American.
The nation's high court issued a rare weekend ruling. The Supreme Court blocked the administration from deporting more people they deemed suspects as the justices review the administration's use of the Alien Enemies Act. And
now let's clear that up, because a lot of people hear that and they say, oh my God, the Supreme Court. No, they just put a pause on it. And it doesn't mean that they cannot continue deporting other people that they have. It's just for this one specific block of people that they had under this Alien Enemies Act. And the 9-0 Supreme Court ruling of the pause was for them to create a way, where they can minimize and eliminate all of these federal judges interfering. I believe what the Supreme Court is going to do is lay out a precedent, no pun intended, where the executive branch can do what they need to do without all of these different injunctions coming from these judges. And you know what's real crazy? All of this due process stuff that everybody's talking about, there was no due process when they came in. And this is what I mean. Like, it is so frustrating when you look at these Democrat politicians and they're literally fighting on behalf of these illegal immigrants. Now, you got Rachel Morin's mother, who had buried her daughter, had to deal with the court case just last week, while her senator is fighting on behalf of the illegal immigrant's wife and his children, while her daughter and her grandchildren are sitting here struggling because their mother's gone due to an El Salvadorian illegal immigrant. Now, you tell me there is an irony in that story. And y'all have to excuse the light. In our house, I'm getting some remodeling done and work done on the inside. I should be back in there tomorrow. So I'm sitting out by the pool doing this video. I apologize for the light. I'll make it quick. But these types of acts that they're pulling, I don't know how anybody can reelect these people. But these Democrat voters is like, they love punishment. It's like in California. This is off topic, and I'm gonna get back on this one. But in California, if you didn't know, in California, in Oakland, the one mayor, the Asian lady, she was removed for her connections to the CCP, taking Chinese money and bribery and all that. They get her out of there. They elect a lady named Barbara Lee, who's a Democrat congressional woman who is all about defunding the police. And she's probably more radical than the lady who they just voted out. So Oakland, it's crazy what Democrat voters do. And this Van Hollen and Garcia from California and Frost is from a district in Florida. I don't know what area in Orlando has voters that are voting in people like Maxwell Frost. I live in Florida and I'm appalled by that. But this is what Chris Van Hollen is going to do. Now, check out this clip here, though, where MSNBC is going to talk about them going, and then I'm going to show you what happened when they actually arrived, just to set the narrative up for you.
4 House Democrats are in El Salvador this morning trying to secure the release of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. This comes just days after Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen's visit. We heard from the senator just a few moments ago. The lawmakers say they plan to meet with Salvadorian officials at the U.S. Embassy to advocate for Abrego Garcia's return and get information on the other migrants who were deported to a notorious Salvadorian prison. Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia of California is leading the delegation and joins us now live from El Salvador. Congressman, good morning. Thank you for being with us this morning. You're there with 3 fellow Democrats. Talk to us, just start why this mission here is so important, and not just about Mr. Abrego Garcia, but all the others who were deported, many would say, without due process.
I really dislike this guy, Robert Garcia. This man is such a left-wing extremist, libtard, propagandist that nothing that he has done nothing in Congress, no legislation. He does nothing more than just get up and orange man bad, orange man bad. I think a lot of these younger Democrats are only being elected because their social media pages show them with all this piss and vinegar, but their legislative ability, their common sense is out of the window. Now, this is Garcia, and I don't even want to get into his clip. Let me just get into the rejection part. Let's get into the good stuff. And then I'm going to show you where Maxwell Frost was destroyed by Will Cain.
In the case of the Maryland man mistakenly deported to El Salvador. In the last hour, we've heard from 4 Democratic members of Congress who are in the Central American country trying to get Kilmar Abrego Garcia back to the U.S.
Yeah, Rafael Sanchez-Cruz is here with us in studio now. And we know, Rafa, these 4 House members say they were not allowed to meet with Abrego Garcia, right?
Yeah, that's right, Lorenzo. The 4 lawmakers say they're in El Salvador trying to pressure for the release of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, but at the same time, they want information on others who have been deported to El Salvador. So on Friday, Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen told reporters that Abrego Garcia has been transferred out of the notorious prison CCOT that you see there and is now at another prison that the Maryland man deems safer. However, Democrats Robert Garcia of California, Maxwell Frost of Florida, Yasmin Ansari of Arizona, and Maxine Dexter of Oregon are demanding that the White House abide by a court order to return Abrego Garcia to the U.S. Both the Trump administration and the Salvadoran government are doubling down, saying the Prince George's County father will remain in custody in his native country. And both governments are also saying that he is a member of the gang MS-13, allegations that Abrego Garcia's family and attorneys deny. Senator Van Hollen says Abrego Garcia has yet to be told under what charges he's being held. Democratic lawmakers are accusing the Trump administration of violating the constitutional rights to due process.
Again, they keep talking about constitutional rights and due process. He's an illegal immigrant, no due process. And the fact of the matter is, none of these congressional members, nobody's heard of them before. You know what they're doing? They're fundraising. These are people who know that their seats are up for grab. And so they're jumping out here. They noticed that Van Hollen was able to catch a media wave when he did his act. Now they decided to go, and they're looking just as ignorant and foolish as he did, but worse, because at least he got with the embassy, and Bukele actually used him to show how hypocritical the Democrats are. I took a picture of him sitting there with margaritas. Dude has got on his clothes, had on that Chicago Bulls hat, all his tattoos fully visible and on the knuckles. That's the only reason why they allowed him to meet with him, just so they could leverage that and use it against him. But these folks thought that they had juice and they were going to go. You're a congressional member. This is the president of a country. And that's how arrogant these Democrats are. They really believe that they're above the president. They're above all of us. That's what they believe. That's why they fight so hard for government workers and for illegal immigrants. They don't give a damn about everybody else, about you and I. That's why Joe Biden's job growth, 80% of it was government jobs. The rest were part-time jobs. While in President Trump's term, in March alone, 228,000 private sector full-time jobs, not government, full-time, and 6,000 government jobs was created too. But these folks grandstand.
We know that our president has a strong relationship with the president of El Salvador and certainly our allies. And we have no doubt that if Donald Trump wants Abrego Garcia back in the United States, that Abrego Garcia would right now be back in the United States. This is on Donald Trump.
No, he was ruled by, see, this is their issue. 2 judges ruled for him to be gone. Trump is abiding by the law. But the fact that he is abiding by the law, they were all constitutional crisis. But when Joe Biden broke the law and allowed the people to flood in, none of those congressional members said a word. Let me get into this clip with Will Cain, because I see the sun is starting to move around, and you know, I don't want all of this to affect the video. And like I said, I promise you, my other ones will be back in the scene. But check out this masterclass with Will Cain and Maxwell Frost, and I'm gonna just let this go.
And this suggestion of you that you've made on several occasions now, that he is going to deport, that Donald Trump has a desire to deport anyone, homegrown American citizens, is the point of our conversation, because the walk that we just went through together is, at least to some measure, an element of due process. We just established together that Abrego Garcia is, at a minimum, not an American citizen. He has been removed from the United States by a court order, which was then withheld, to your point, but he was ordered removable. The same courts found that he was a gang member of MS-13. MS-13 is a foreign terrorist designated organization. Those elements, without litigating each, hold on real quick. Hold on. Without litigating each and every one of those details, what would seem clear, Congressman?
In court.
Okay.
Allegations
without
doesn't mean truth.
Without litigating that, once again, which a court has litigated, Congressman. Forgive me for 1 second. The point is, he's not anyone. He's not an average American citizen. He's not someone watching from home. He is an illegal alien. He is an alleged gang member of a foreign terrorist designated organization, and he was ordered removed. That would seem a level of elements of due process certainly distinguishes him from the average American citizen. And you are making a very scary argument to Americans today. You are suggesting to Americans, if he can remove this man, the details of which we just walked through, you're suggesting he can remove you. And that seems a pretty far cry from reality.
It is not a far cry from reality. And I do have to say something. You know, I born and raised Southern Baptist, and
I just got to say, that was a master class what Will Cain did, where he walked them through, because in the prior clips, he said, hey, he went to court. He got in front of a judge. So he narrowed it down so they can't keep saying there's no due process crap when you got 2 deportation rulings from federal judges. You can't say no due process when he was actually picked up and arrested with the wife and the whole restraining order thing. So he has had levels of due process. And the fact that the Democrats want to take this illegal immigrant gang-banging woman beater and equate him with a homegrown American citizen as being deported out is nuts. And that's what he did. So I just wanted to bring it up to speed. That's what Will Cain did to make sure he got him in the corner where he can't keep trying to litigate it online. Facts are, he had due process.
I don't think anyone is nobody, number one. But number two, he did not have due process. He was given a protective status. And the fact of the matter is that Donald Trump talked about doing the same thing to U.S. citizens just about less than a week ago. And that should concern people. I'm not here to litigate the man specifically. He can come back to the United States and go through the process. That's what we want to happen. But that's not what's going on. And you want to talk about courts. Wait, hold on. You want to talk about courts, but the highest court in the land told Donald Trump what to do: facilitate him coming back to the country. And guess what they did? They flipped the bird to the Supreme Court. That's not the rule of law.
Now, this is the same congressional member whose credit is so bad that he can't get approved to get an apartment. This is the same congressional member, I believe he's 24, 25 years old now, no children, not married, who likes to give life advice on how things should go. He's an extreme left-wing libtard that is anti-guns, pro men and women's sports, pro unaliving babies in the woman's womb, pro open borders. So you know where he's coming from. And for these people to keep saying no due process when there's literally record of judges ordering his deportation is insane to me.
And so we should all be.
I've heard you make that argument, and I've heard Senator Van Hollen make that argument, that you're all of a sudden very dedicated to due process, and you're all of a sudden very dedicated to the legitimacy of decisions made by the Supreme Court of the United States. It's all
you're saying all of a sudden
I feel like Congressman, I feel like
civil liberties.
Excuse me.
Even for people I disagree with, and that's the difference between us.
Excuse me. I feel like, personally, we'll let the audience decide if 10 months is relatively recently to be an adoptee of the legitimacy of the courts. Because on July 1st of 2024, you posted on your website the following. It's up right now if anyone wants to go to your website. Our country and the world will now recognize this day as the day the Supreme Court of the United States effectively became an illegitimate, politically corrupt arm of the conservative right wing. That's when the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that Donald Trump had immunity from prosecution. And on that day, 10 months ago, you called the Supreme Court of the United States illegitimate. Here today, all of a sudden, you seem to be very dedicated, principled, in fact, to the simple rules of law, due process, and legitimacy of the court.
I still hold that the Supreme Court is very much skewed to the right and that there is corruption on the court. I do hold that today. But the fact that the court is so skewed to the right, and even then, they're still saying a complete decision, unanimous decision, that he needs to be brought home. Shows that this shouldn't be a partisan issue.
Then he says brought home. Do you hear that? And then the 9-0 was not 9-0 for him to be brought here. That's not what it was. It was 9-0 that said that the 9-0 wasn't even about that. The facilitation of him coming to America was just a line thrown in there saying, hey, the Trump administration has to facilitate it. They didn't say make it happen. They didn't say had to bring back. They would have put that verbiage in there. And I can't stand how these libtards spin it like that.
True. It should be a thing that Democrats, Republicans, everybody are coming behind. Bring the guy home so he can go through due process. That is what the Supreme Court, the conservative-leaning Supreme Court says.
He is home.
Congressman, from this vantage point, respectfully, if you haven't always been dedicated to these principles, if you in fact have called the Supreme Court of the United States illegitimate very recently, and if you can acknowledge that Abrego Garcia is not your average American citizen, and his circumstances are not anyone watching that is ready to be deported from the United States, from this vantage point, respectfully, it appears as though your trip to El Salvador is less about principle and even less about Abrego Garcia and more about grandstanding and fear-mongering American citizens in a continuing narrative that casts yourself as a hero in this melodrama and the villain as Donald Trump.
I am no hero at this moment. I am one of many fighting for the rule of law and fighting to ensure that everybody in this country have due process. I am one of many. I'm not the first member of Congress here, and I'm sure as hell not going to be the last. This isn't.
He did not like that. He did not like that. Way to get him, Will.
About Maxwell Frost. This is about preventing our country from losing what makes it exceptional. That no matter who you are, when you are in the United States, you have due process. That is one of the many things that sets us apart from other places in this world. And as a member of the United States Congress, I'm going to fight like hell to preserve that no matter what.
Well, I wish you wouldn't scare the average American citizen based upon this, but I do agree with you, and we'll be watching your career, that you're always dedicated to the concept of due process, and we do wish you luck, by the way, in El Salvador in locating Kilmar Abrego Garcia. We also appreciate you joining us all the way from El Salvador today. Thank you, Congressman.
Will Cain called him out. That's all he's doing is grandstanding. So these Democrats are not serious. They took taxpayer. Oh, that's another thing about it. They tried to use taxpayer dollars. James Comer shot him down and then said, okay, no, you're not going to use taxpayer dollars to go over there and to grandstand against the United States president. Now, if you wanted to make it, and they said, if you want to make it sponsored by taxpayer dollars, okay, but you have to live stream it at your meeting and you have to take pictures and photos and post them. And so the Democrats said, oh, so they're using campaign money to go over there. So people that are giving them money for their re-election campaigns, that money's being spent to go over for a losing cause where there is no way, shape, form, or fashion is this man are going to be allowed back into America. It's just not happening. It's not happening. But yet they're grandstanding. It's kind of like when they kept telling us the border was closed. I mean, they were calling it right-wing conspiracies. Or remember we said that Joe Biden wasn't there altogether. Right-wing conspiracy. Oh, there's nothing wrong with Joe Biden. He's doing backflips and could do pinky finger push-ups on his head. It was the most insane stuff. Now all of these right-wing conspiracy turn out to be Democrat lies and actual truths, right? So these people these people get on my nerves. They make me sick. And excuse the lighting. That's kind of creepy. I'm going to get up out of that. But hey, listen, if you stay with me this far, especially with the lighting like this, thank you so much. Remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel. My videos are typically much, much better than this as far as the lighting goes. But and I forgot about the sun setting and whatnot. But like always, please stay safe. Be great. I'm Brian Maxwell, and I look forward to seeing you at the top. Over and out, y'all.